Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Will Norris, and I am a Cardano DRep. Today, we're going to be discussing the governance action protocol parameter change to reduce the Treasury tax from 20% to 10%. I will give a background overview of how staking rewards are created and distributed within Cardano, and then dive into the specifics of what the proposal is suggesting to change and what it perceives to be the benefits. Following this, I will review the sentiment across X and then pull my own conclusions together. I will finish up with telling you how I will vote. If you like this discussion and this content, please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on X, and delegate to me as a DRep. Now let's get started. First up, some background knowledge on how Cardano's staking rewards function. Cardano operates on a proof-of-stake consensus mechanism known as Ouroboros, which differs from proof-of-work systems like Bitcoin. Instead of relying on energy-intensive mining, Cardano's security and block validation comes from ADA holders delegating their ADA to stake pools run by stake pool operators, or SPOs. The process follows these steps. Firstly, delegation. ADA holders delegate their tokens to a stake pool through wallets like Eternal or Typhon. Importantly, the ADA remains in their control. It is not locked and can be spent at any time. Secondly, epochs. Time in Cardano is divided into epochs, each lasting 5 days. At the end of each epoch, staking rewards are calculated and distributed. Finally, reward distribution. The amount of ADA a stake pool receives is based on the number of blocks it produces, which tends to correlate with how much delegation it has attracted. The rewards are then shared amongst delegators proportionally after the stake pool deducts its fees, including a fixed minimum of 170 ADA per epoch and a variable margin set by the pool. So, where do staking rewards come from? Cardano's staking rewards come from two primary sources. The first being transaction fees. Every transaction on the network incurs a small fee, which is collected into a pool and then distributed as part of the staking rewards. Secondly, monetary expansion, or the reserve emissions. When Cardano launched, not all 45 billion ADA was in circulation. A portion was placed into a reserve, which gradually is released to fund staking rewards. The sum of these two, the reserve emissions and the transaction fees, build up the pool. And currently, 80% of that pool is allocated to stakers, while 20% is carved out for the Treasury. This Treasury funds the ecosystem development initiatives like Project Catalyst. When staking began in 2020, the reserve held 13.4 billion ADA, and staking yields were around 5 to 5.5% annually. Each epoch, a small percentage, about 0.22% of the remaining reserve, is emitted to the rewards pool for distribution. Since this percentage applies to a shrinking total, the amount of new ADA entering circulation decreases over time. As such, and unlike Bitcoin's fixed halvings, Cardano follows a gradual decay model for reward emissions. After about 4.5 years of emissions from 2020 to 2025, the reserve now holds between 8 and 9 billion ADA. As a result, staking APY has gradually declined to around 2.5%, depending on pool performance and fees. With 0.22% of the reserve released every 5 days, this equates to roughly 19.8 million ADA per epoch, or 1.44 billion ADA annually, a figure that will continue decreasing as the reserve depletes. Cardano's staking model is designed for long-term sustainability, meaning rewards will continue to decline in a predictable way. The reserve will continue depleting, likely halving every 4 to 5 years. By 2030, it may be down to 4 billion ADA, pushing staking APY close to 1.5 to 2%. By 2050, most of the reserve will be fully emitted, meaning staking rewards will solely rely on transaction fees. If Cardano's adoption increases, then higher transaction volumes could help sustain staking rewards. If adoption remains lower than expected, staking yields could fall below 1%, resembling Bitcoin's transition to a fee-only model. Ultimately, Cardano's staking mechanism is designed for sustainability. not perpetual high yields, reinforcing its long-term focus on decentralization and network security. Protocol changes, such as adjusting the Treasury split, fee structure, or emissions rate, could influence how rewards are allocated in the future. Now, let's dive into what the governance action in question is and what implications it may have for Cardano and its staking rewards mechanism. This governance proposal puts forward that lowering the Treasury cut from 20% to 10% will help optimize staking rewards while still maintaining a financially sustainable Treasury. The intention behind this adjustment is to create a more balanced economic model that could potentially incentivize participation, strengthen network security, and better align with Cardano's long-term growth strategy. The existing 20% Treasury cut was set at the launch of Shelley without an extensive reassessment over time. The proposal suggests that a lower Treasury cut will increase staking rewards, which may encourage broader participation in staking, contribute to decentralization, and enhance network security. However, the proposal raises questions about how such a reduction might impact Treasury funding over time. So, what is the potential impact to staking rewards? From a mathematical standpoint, reducing the Treasury cut to 10% would result in a 12.5% increase in staking rewards across the network for delegators. If the current staking APY is 2.8%, this change would raise it to approximately 3.15%. This adjustment does make staking more attractive for ADA holders. The proposal suggests that Cardano's Treasury can remain financially sustainable even with a reduced cut, particularly as ADA's price appreciates. It also presents the view that shifting incentives towards staking rewards could drive real economic activity, potentially leading to higher transaction volume and organic Treasury inflows. The proposal goes further to say that reducing Treasury contributions would require a more strategic resource allocation. A smaller Treasury could encourage greater scrutiny over funding requests, fostering a more competitive environment for grant proposals. However, this does raise questions about whether fewer available funds might limit certain ecosystem initiatives in the future. The key argument made in the proposal is that higher staking rewards could encourage wider participation, leading to greater decentralization. By making staking more attractive, we could reduce the risk of centralization among stake pools and strengthen the overall security of the network. Ultimately, this governance action invites discussion on whether the current Treasury cut is still optimal or if an adjustment is warranted, in light of Cardano's evolving economic landscape. Now, let's take a look at the sentiment across X and review the pros and the cons. The prevailing sentiment among key opinion leaders and thought influencers on X leans towards a cautious and measured approach when considering a reduction in the Cardano Treasury cut. While many acknowledge the potential benefits of lowering the Treasury allocation, the dominant view suggests that such a move would be more appropriate in the medium term, once Cardano has reached a more mature stage of scalability and adoption. That said, this is not a universally held opinion, and perspectives within the community vary significantly. Let's review some key sentiments from the community. Firstly, scalability and adoption needs. Cardano's Basho era focused on scalability. Improvements like Hydra remain incomplete. Many argue that Treasury funds are critical for technical upgrades and marketing to drive adoption, and that reducing funding now could undermine these efforts. Secondly, alternative use of Treasury funds. Rather than boosting staking rewards, some believe the 10% savings from a Treasury cut would be better spent on DeFi initiatives like stablecoin liquidity and ecosystem incentives. The concern is that if ADA's price drops significantly, high staking rewards alone may not provide meaningful long-term value. Thirdly, risks to network stability. A 150 million ADA annual increase in staking rewards could create selling pressure during a bear market, potentially destabilizing the network. Critics emphasize the need to balance incentives with monetary stability to ensure long-term security. Fourth, Treasury sustainability. Despite its size of about 1.5 billion ADA, Cardano's Treasury is seen as modest compared to competitors like Ethereum. With transaction fees not yet high enough to sustain the network, some argue that preserving treasury reserves is crucial until adoption increases. Fifth, the issue of unclaimed rewards. A significant portion of rewards, about 55%, go unclaimed and return to the reserve rather than funding the treasury. Some propose adjusting the staking reward algorithm via governance rather than cutting the treasury's share. 6. Minimal impact on staking rewards. The proposed increase in staking rewards is relatively small, with some estimating only about 6 additional ADA per 100,000 staked. Given Cardano's fixed supply model, many argue that large staking incentives are less critical compared to inflationary proof-of-stake chains. Fiscal responsibility. With Intersec's 263 million ADA budget proposal, concerns arise that reducing the treasury cut while funding major initiatives could create budget deficits. Many prefer stable, predictable monetary policy rather than frequent adjustments. 8. A long-term perspective. Many believe the treasury serves all ADA holders, not just short-term stakers, and should be preserved for strategic investments that drive adoption and ecosystem growth rather than short-term yield boosts. Now, if I were to try to conclude the community sentiment, it would be that while perspectives vary, many in the community advocate for a careful, research-driven approach before adjusting the treasury cut. Concerns about timing, network security, and fiscal sustainability dominate the discussion, with a preference for alternative solutions that strengthen Cardano's long-term economic model. This debate underscores the delicate balance between incentivizing staking, ensuring treasury sustainability, and fostering adoption, making it a pivotal governance decision that will shape Cardano's future trajectory. So where do I stand as a DRep on the issue of reducing the treasury cut from 20% to 10%? I have conflicting opinions. On one hand, I think reducing that tax from 20% to 10% will benefit a lot of the ADA holders. It could drive a lot more innovation, and it could drive more interest in Cardano. It could drive more users to come. It could drive more staking. It could drive more decentralization. Now, while I'm saying that, it's all could. These are all hypotheticals. This hasn't happened. This hasn't been proven or shown that it even will happen. So it's a little bit speculative. And on the other hand, we've got the more cautious approach, saying, look, right now it's not broken. Yes, ADA price has been going up. I mean, right now it's fluctuating up and down. We're still at the beginning or the early stages of what could be a very, very big bull market, but the price isn't there yet. So do we want to rush into making these changes, or can we afford the time to wait and make these changes a little bit more in the future? There hasn't been the research done. There hasn't been a lot of thought and analysis put into this. One thing I think that this makes abundantly clear is there should be some sort of analytical or consulting firms that they're paid to, or it's their job to go and analyze all of these proposals and come to their conclusions and advise the DReps, advise the government of Cardano, advise the people who are delegating their stake, their ADA to DReps. Now, while we don't want to centralize any of these decisions and centralize authorities to make decisions and advise on these decisions, it would be useful to have trusted companies, independent companies that can come to these conclusions, do this analysis, because right now it's just individuals on X. And while it's very much a sort of grassroots approach, which is good, I think the Cardano ecosystem needs to mature more before making these big decisions. So on that basis, I am leaning much more towards being cautious and biding our time before we make any big decisions. So my vote will be no at this point in time to reduce the Treasury tax. Thank you once again for watching my channel. If you did enjoy this video, then please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and delegate to me as a DRep, and also give me that follow on X. Thank you, and see you next time.